The 5 soil forming factors are parent material, topography, climate, biological influences or vegetation, and time. Each of the 5 soil forming factors works independently from each other. However, they do work together to provide or produce a soil that is unique to that particular set of circumstances. Parent materials can be either transported from one place to another. They can be transported by wind, water, or ice, glaciers, or it can be what we call a residual parent material that forms in place from the bedrock that's below. Often the bedrock below the parent material determines what type of parent material that we have. Mineral parent materials produce mineral soils. Organic parent materials produce organic soils. They are very different in their final composition and very different in what they can grow. Organic parent materials generally form in very wet, swampy areas where organic matter doesn't decompose quickly, so has the opportunity to build up over the years. Whereas mineral parent materials can form anywhere. Topography or relief has a big impact on the soil that forms as well. Topography is the lay of the land, hills, valleys, or plateaus. If you're on top of a hill, those soils often have better drainage and so produce a different soil than if you're at the bottom of a hill that the water runs to, stays wetter, it's more poorly drained, and so we get a different soil forming. The climate soil forming factor is the long-term average of the conditions at a particular place over the years. And so that means that you can have a hot, dry climate or a cold, wet climate, but that climate is something that occurs over thousands of years and not just a year-to-year basis or a particular season. So for example, in southern Ontario, our climate is considered to be a temperate climate that is moist. So in other words, we get a reasonable amount of rainfall. In our area, about 900 to 1,000 millimeters of rainfall per year, as well as temperatures are fairly moderate, rarely falling below minus 30 degrees Celsius and rarely getting above about 35 degrees Celsius. The biological influences or natural vegetation have a big impact on the soil that's formed. The 2 main types of vegetation that we get are forests or grasslands. The soils we get from a forest are very different than the soils we get from grasslands. Under a forest, we tend to get shallower topsoils, shallower soils, and less organic matter. Under grasslands, the topsoils tend to be a lot deeper and have a lot more organic matter in them. The natural vegetation is greatly affected by climate. Obviously, if you get lots of rain and lots of heat, you're going to get different vegetation than if you have a cold, dry climate. Time is also a soil forming factor. Often we don't think of time, but all the other soil forming factors need time to work together to create a soil. It takes time for chemical reactions to occur. It takes time for plants to grow and organic materials to build up. It just takes a lot of time for a soil to form. The soils in southern Ontario have been forming for somewhere between 8,000 and 12,000 years, and they are considered to be very young soils. In tropical areas, the soils can be millions of years old. They would be considered old soils, and they are very different than the younger soils that you might have in a glaciated area.